Hello, everyone. I'm Jordana Van of Ravenlight Holistic Healing, home of the most comprehensive animal totem and spirit guide information on the web, and I'm about to start releasing videos again. Since it's been some time since the last one and there have been a lot of questions and some concerns about my absence, I wanted to give you guys an update on what's been going on with me and what's coming up next. For those of you who are worried, I'm okay. I did, however, go through 9 kinds of sparkly hell there for a while, thanks to my buddy Raven, who loves to throw me into the soup and see if I've finally learned how to swim. So much fun, guys. Seriously. We'll get to all that in a few minutes. Anyway, for those of you who are just here to learn what's coming up and weren't even aware I'd taken a hiatus, here's the first bit of exciting news. I'm now offering one-off sessions to new clients. If you've always wanted to work with me, but you missed your shot the last time, this is your chance. These sessions are open to new clients only, and you're only able to book one session. Follow-up's not available. That being said, even with my returning clients, the intention has never been for this to be prolonged therapy, but to give you everything you need in one session to be the author of your own progress and healing. And when you need additional help, to be able to connect to it yourself if I'm not available. You should walk away from your session feeling safe and empowered, not dependent. I'm making a limited number of one-off sessions available each month, each of which is a minimum of 1.5 hours and a maximum of 3 hours. Because I'm just starting this up again, and there have been a lot of you guys asking about these, it might take a little while for you to get a space, so be patient. Also, at present, these sessions are open to U.S. residents only. But if you're not a U.S. resident, please do check my website from time to time because I do hope to return to seeing international clients in the future. For more information, including descriptions of the sessions I offer, the cost of each, and how to schedule, please visit my website www.ravenlightholistichealing.com and click on the Sessions tab. Don't email me directly to ask for this info because I will just direct you back to the site. Okay, on to the next bit of news. New videos are finally on their way. Later this month, you can look forward to a set of animal totem and spirit guide videos on dragonfly, followed by a set on praying mantis in late summer, and then white-tailed deer in the fall. If all goes to plan, and in a few minutes you'll understand why inside my head I'm laughing hysterically as I use that phrase, there will also be a video on cardinal as a spirit guide in the winter. I may get a wild hair and do an additional video here or there. There are a few I would really like to get to, but it is my intention to primarily focus the bulk of my energy on finally finishing my book on wolves in story, spirituality, and human history. Videos take 4 to 6 dedicated weeks or more to research, interpret, script, record, and then edit for upload. And they're so demanding that thanks to a very pushy Raven, I have finally accepted that I can't make videos, each of which is a little book in and of itself, and write a whole other book in the same time period. So, the Wolf Book. I had intended to finish it at least a year ago, and in a few minutes you're going to get to hear about all the fun I was having instead. But as it stands, it's about 2/3 of the way done. I expect to publish it in 2026, and I am beyond excited about it. So are all of my friends, family members, and spin class students who I am certain cannot wait for me to switch to talking about something else, anything else besides wolves. In the first draft of the script for this video, I went on about the contents of the book for quite some time, and I ultimately decided to drastically cut that time so that I don't lose those of you guys who are not as fascinated by wolves and wolf lore and history as I am. You're welcome. For those of you who are excited to learn countless things about the wolf and the history of werewolves, did you know that the first text ever written featured a werewolf? That almost no one today knows. This book resembles my previous works about as much as an iceberg resembles an orange. It's so much more than an interpretation of wolf as a totem and spirit guide. It is the thousands upon thousands of years of myths, legends, fairy tales, folklore, literary fiction and nonfiction, history, and evolving scientific study from around the world that have defined for us what the wolf is, both as a physical animal and as a spiritual one. More than any other creature on earth, the wolf as we think we know it has been a creation of human bias, not biology and not behavior. Or as wildlife biologist Al David Meach famously said, the wolf is in the eye of the beholder. As I'm sure you can tell, I'm beyond jazzed to get back to work on this project, and now that is all I'm going to say about that. Now, on to precisely what I've been doing all this time. I'm actually a really private person, guys, something that has been very challenging, being even such a minor public figure as I am. It's a constant balancing act to balance being a public figure and a private person, and it's not one at which I'm always successful. So what I'm going to be giving you guys in a second is the seriously condensed version of a 2.5-year journey that is still in progress today. So this being the case, please don't jump to any conclusions based on the limited amount that I'll be sharing, because it's not even remotely the whole story, just some of the bigger highlights, if you can use that word. So, it should be obvious from my business name that Raven is one of my totems. Raven has been with me for as long as I can remember, and one of the super cute things that Raven does is lead you to make mistakes that cost you dearly. Mistakes you never would have made if you had not been guided right to their door by synchronicity after synchronicity. This is because there are lessons to be learned from the consequences of those mistakes, so you need to make them. And Raven is a trickster, after all. My parade of mistakes began a month after the universe had, unbeknownst to me, prepared the way by telling me in no uncertain terms that I really needed to step away from making videos and seeing clients so that I could devote all my attention to my book on wolves, which is what I did in October 2022. I was so proud of myself for taking such a big risk, and I was so sure that I was going to finish that book in no time. Finally! Minimizing distractions and focusing on something to the exclusion of all else until I finally finish it is one of the skills I'm intended to develop in this lifetime. And I thought I had finally landed on the plan that would allow me to do that. Woo! You guys know the saying, you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans? The same could be said of Raven. He really loves to throw a good plan into the wood chipper. The first mistake yielded a minor injury. Counseled by 3 different doctors who misdiagnosed said injury, all the while telling me what an idiot the others were, and in one case what an idiot I was for having the gall to claim that I knew my own body well enough to believe I was injured and not just old. And their treatment, because it was prescribed for the wrong injury, turned the minor injury into a major injury. This resulted in my being unable to walk or drive for 6 months. And because I'm normally an extremely active person, there were cascading effects on the rest of my body caused by the prolonged absence of my usual intense cardio and strength training. All of this craziness produced a second injury to my shoulder, but for a host of reasons thoroughly beyond my control, I was unable to receive treatment for that until it was really causing problems, and also required more than a year of physical therapy. And all of that made it harder for my body to heal and did a whopper of a number on my mental health as well. My entire being revolves around movement more than anything else. It's what keeps me grounded. So for that reason, I spin, I weight train, I run, walk, hike, step, or do yoga at least 6 days a week. And suddenly, the movement was gone. I'm also a spin instructor, and so there went the 2 to 4 times a week that I got to teach, and that had also been a big part of my life. These were some dark days, guys. What kept me going through all of this was an assortment of animal guides that told me what was coming before it happened, because that confirmed that there was a plan. Not my plan, but a plan nonetheless. And if there was a plan, there was a reason that all of this insanity was playing out the way that it was. First was Polar Bear, who showed up a few weeks before everything went off the rails. Nothing about Polar Bear spoke to me, except for the fact that its feet are specifically adapted to walk on ice, even very thin sea ice. I had no idea what that could mean, until suddenly I was spending month upon unending month doing hours of physical therapy for my right foot, after which it had to be iced. This was combined with nerve trauma caused by the incorrect treatment and some truly fabulous body temperature issues, which also required ice on the Tootsies. Awesome! Thank you, Polar Bear! So, as I sat there, infuriated, either icing my foot with bags of frozen peas or doing the physical therapy exercises that I was certain were wrong for me, but that I was doing anyway because I had to get moving again somehow and the universe hadn't given me another option, I did what I would tell you guys to do. I felt and I felt and I felt my feelings, and I finally figured out that the way my predicament was making me feel really resembled another situation in my life that had been driving me nuts, but that I'd been minimizing because it didn't actually seem to be hurting me. This told me that the situation actually was hurting me in ways that I hadn't understood. And so I figured out what those were, and then I knuckled down and I resolved them. And lo and behold, I was finally at peace with something that had been making me unhappy, far more unhappy than I realized, for the better part of 13 years. I truly, truly bless that first arrogant, ignorant doctor and my deeply caring but just as deeply inexperienced first physical therapist, because they put me in the place to feel all of those revelatory things and free myself. It wasn't long after that that the actual nature of the injury was finally uncovered, because the incorrect therapy worsened it to such a degree that the strained tendon tore. And whereas before I'd still been limping around a bit and driving, albeit in constant pain and fear, the tear forced me to spend week upon wretched week sitting on my behind. You know how polar bears are part of the frozen areas of the world? Well, I was frozen. I had been told this was coming too. A few weeks before the tendon tear, polar bear was replaced with hummingbird. Hummingbirds can't use their feet to walk. They can perch, but that's it. And I was beyond horrified. I was going to completely lose my lower mobility and have to rely exclusively upon my upper body. And that is exactly what happened. I wound up in a boot in one leg and an even up rig to a sandal on the other. And while I was technically able to walk, I wasn't allowed to do much more than shuffle around my house, and I wasn't allowed to stand for more than a few minutes at a time. I couldn't even stand up to shower. So even moving around that little bit in a way that was utterly foreign to me and with this awkward weight on one side caused problems with my left foot as well, which was utterly terrifying. For those of you who rely upon a wheelchair, I have so much freaking respect for you. Oh my God. TV makes it look so easy. It is not easy. And not only is it not easy, but when the chair your cousins lovingly lend you is too big for your little house, you are in for a real treat. I got stuck in my bedroom doorway. It was every bit as mortifying as it sounds. It was also hilarious once I stopped hyperventilating. If Raven takes photos, I am pretty sure he has one of that incident and is currently using it as his unlock screen. As soon as my doctor put me in the boot, after several hellish weeks of trying to convince him that not only was I not getting better, but the physical therapy he prescribed had caused some serious damage and I genuinely needed the MRI he had heretofore considered unnecessary, I got the hell out of there. And the universe finally facilitated my connection with the right doctor and the right physical therapist, two truly magical people who got me back on track. The revelation I mentioned a few moments ago that came from all that feeling was only one of so many that I honestly cannot remember them all. And I would not have experienced them without the injuries. I needed them. And that was why I was guided into situations that created them. But once the damage was well and truly done, it was time to begin healing, and that had its own plethora of lessons. My shoulder had just begun giving me mild hints that it was going to need some attention before all this started, and there's a whole other story around that. But having to be a hummingbird, doing everything with my upper body, and trying to continue some kind of exercise routine by doing what kind of seated strength training I was able, it rapidly worsened the issue, and then pretty soon I couldn't use this arm. So I had a badly damaged right foot, a left foot in increasing pain, and almost no ability to use my right arm, meaning I had to do everything with my left, which I wasn't accustomed to doing, and that began creating trouble there as well. I am not sure I have ever been so scared in my entire life. Fortunately, my saint of a new doctor, my equally divine physical therapist, took me seriously at once. I got 2 more MRIs, one on my left foot and one on my right arm and shoulder, and treatment was prescribed. I'm actually a frequent flyer, quote unquote, at my MRI places now. It's cute. Anyway, the unfortunate thing once we got the MRI was that we determined that step 1 of the treatment was to stop using my upper body as much as possible. So bye-bye any semblance of my normal active life. But once again, there had been a heads up. I began seeing my new physical therapist at the end of my imprisonment in the boot. And under her incredible care, I was able to begin walking again one tiny step at a time, no pun intended. But when my shoulder began giving me fits, ostrich showed up to replace hummingbird, and it was time for another delightful twist in the path. Ostrich is pretty much the opposite of hummingbird. It has incredibly strong feet and legs. In fact, it's the fastest two-legged animal on Earth, and its kick is so strong that it can actually kill a lion. And yet, while it has those big, beautiful wings, it cannot use them to fly. Instead, they're used for balance or as a rudder to help it change direction when it runs, which is pretty much how I had to treat my arms, while meanwhile doing yet more hours of physical therapy each day to heal and strengthen my feet. I couldn't use the arms for anything active, but I held onto chairs and counters for balance while I did my exercises, and to railings as I climbed stairs, one maddening foot at a time. And just about everywhere I walked in my neighborhood, I had to hold my arms out a bit like I was walking on a tightrope or doing a drunk test. It wasn't just the injury that had damaged my lower body, but the combined effects of not using it for 6 months. Some really lovely hormonal balances tied to the unprecedented change in my routine, and further hormonal issues that were natural but exacerbated by the emotional stress and lack of exercise. I had a long way to go, but I loved envisioning myself as an ostrich with those fabulously strong legs and feet, running and running for hours on end like I used to. And if some of those visualizations also involved me kicking the ever-loving stuffing out of those who had put me in that position, however much I did know that I needed to be there, well, being angry has its own healing powers. You have to heal you have to feel to heal. And I felt a lot of anger that first year. So, not using the shoulder didn't heal it, as I said, and physical therapy was then prescribed for that as well. For a while there, my life was a nonstop physical therapy session. Literally, if I wasn't being driven to physical therapy, I was doing physical therapy. Tons and tons and tons of physical therapy. It took months, but I was gradually able to start cycling again and then walking longer distances. I'm in my 2nd year of physical therapy, and I'm spinning and walking and doing yoga with only minor discomfort, and some days none at all. And I'm even doing moderate weight training and starting to do short jogs in which I alternate between 3 minutes of jogging and 2 minutes of walking a few times a month. I don't think I've ever been as happy in my entire life as I was the first time I was able to get on the treadmill and crank the speed up beyond a walk. Incomparable bliss, guys. I know some of you think I'm nuts, but cardio really is my zen. I'm also driving again, thank God. Endless love and gratitude go to my husband and my mom, who picked up all the groceries and other sundries and chauffeured me to endless doctor's appointments and physical therapy sessions when I was, let's just say, not my sunniest, most cheerful self. Even with all the improvements, I'm still in the process of bringing everything back in line. I do physical therapy every day, sometimes twice a day, and I still go to weekly sessions with a physical therapist. The hormonal issues I mentioned, which are complicated and have demanded both an emotional and a medical approach, seriously impede the healing process. They tighten up my muscles, they slow my recovery from exertion, they reduce my strength and endurance, they trigger inflammation, and they prevent me from sleeping. And so depending on what's going on that front, some days I feel really great, almost 100% my old self again. Some days I feel really, really bad. But even though there are still days when I feel like I have been tumbled in the dryer with a bunch of sharp rocks, I am in awe of this amazing universe that always knows better than I do what I need. Left to my own devices, I would never have chosen this. which is why it's a good thing I wasn't left to my own devices. Not everything with which I've been dealing has been about my personal growth or something I was intended to release or change. Some of it was purely a matter of education. I had numerous experiences that simply had to be lived, because without them, I could not be an accurate source of information, validation, and counsel for my clients. The same is true for my writing and my videos. If I was going to be an effective teacher, if I was going to provide material that could actually help people, I needed to return to being a student. There were just so many things I didn't know. Things are still chaotic here. They have literally not stopped being nuts since 2022, something my astrological chart was fortunately quite clear was going to be the case at least a good ways into 2025. Yay! But despite the ongoing three-ring circus, I am most definitely on the mend. Ostrich finally bolted off a few months ago. Raven is back to supervise the cleanup and restructuring process. Ravens are creatures of routine. They will absolutely lose their little feathered minds when their daily rituals are altered. And the foundational aspects of my routine were completely absent for an almost unbearable length of time. I'm a double Taurus with a Virgo Mars, so routine and order are critical for my mental health, which is the other reason I struggled so much. It wasn't just that I wasn't getting the physical activity that my body and mind were accustomed to receiving, but that those things that brought me a sense of structure and security were absent. I was in this constant state of freefall with nothing but the endless physical therapy to give my day a sense of dimension. But while I could not do many of the things that brought me joy and peace, I also could not do the things that had not been bringing me joy. The things I'd been doing for one reason or another because I was convinced I had to, and boy, was that a revelation. I'd had no idea how badly I wanted to stop doing those things, how badly I needed to stop doing them, until I was awash in the relief of having legitimate excuse not to. One of those things was the endless answering of calls, texts, messages, emails, and letters from people who considered me a friend, people who, even if they were only acquaintances, I cared about and therefore made an effort to respond to. I was also being asked to meet people for coffee or for virtual chats at least weekly, and I just kept telling myself that because I could find a way to fit it into my schedule, I should. Over the years, I've become really proficient at setting boundaries with most new people who want my time and energy. But until that skill really became second nature, I was constantly adding new ongoing relationships to the substantial number I already had. At the time of the injury, there were a lot of people in my life, guys. Some really, really lovely people, but still a lot. If someone thought of me as a friend, I didn't want them to feel abandoned or betrayed. I've experienced a lot of abandonment and betrayal in my life, and the fact that it was always by people that weren't really right for me in the first place, and that I was therefore better off without, it didn't make it sting any less. Hello, 9 life path and all of its glorious abandonment and entanglement issues. I was trying to spare everyone the pain I'd experienced myself, with the result that I was causing myself an entirely different sort of pain, and I couldn't figure out how to stop it. Not remaining present in these relationships just wasn't an option. I couldn't be the one who made someone else feel as unworthy of love or attention as I had been made to feel. I tried quite a few things that did not work. Even before the injuries, as my productivity suffered and my failure to take adequate quiet time to myself began to take a toll on my mental health, I decided I would only deal with non-work related communication at the end of my workday or on weekends. But when I got there, I felt only resentment because my job, which I love, is extremely demanding, and I still needed far more time for myself than I was allowing. Socializing does not recharge my batteries. Solitude does. I needed to completely disconnect, and to do so for days, not to be continuously present and real and thoughtful. And so every day I wound up with a pile of people wanting or expecting my attention and no desire to give it, and yet I was finding ways to give it anyway. In February 2022, the wheels really began to come off the bus, and what followed was a lengthy period of time during which I was hanging on to my faith and my sanity by my fingernails. By June, I absolutely could not focus on anything but working through the lessons I was receiving one breath at a time. So that was what I did. It was a truly savage form of self-care and was absolutely non-negotiable, even if it worried or hurt the feelings of those who kept reaching out and went unanswered. I didn't even have the capacity to worry that I was worrying people. I had no idea how much I needed that. When I stopped trying to be present for far, far more people than any one woman could handle, I felt a sense of peace and relief and rightness that I have not felt since before text messaging was invented. It has become apparent to me that I simply cannot go back to the way things were before. And so even though I am almost fully back to my pre-injury functionality, at least most days, I am reserving what time and energy I don't devote to my clients and my writing for myself and for those in my immediate social circle. This is the biggest change that Raven has demanded of me, and it is in fact one of the primary reasons I felt it necessary to make this video. There are a great many of you who were used to hearing back from me and were concerned by my lack of reply when you reached out over the past few years, whether this was through comments, messages, or emails, the many cards and letters that were sent unopened to our recycling center, or the gifts that were donated unopened to Goodwill. If this was you, please know it was not just you. It was everyone but my small inner circle. This was simply the way it had to be in order for me to heal. And while you probably did not receive an acknowledgement at the time, I can tell you now that I am beyond honored to have been the focus of so much love. I'm also deeply grateful for your grace and understanding that while I will not be retreating from sharing my professional work with you. Indeed, there's a lot more to come. I will be taking a step back from sharing me. What does this look like? Some of you have already noticed that I'm not allowing comments on this particular video, which is an act of self-care. I will also not be responding to comments on other videos if their purpose is to ask about my personal life. Over the past few years, I did indeed answer many of you guys who asked questions related to the subject matter in my videos, and I will joyfully continue to do that. Responding to your questions kept me connected with the spirit of my work, besides which I really do love helping people. I'm just realizing that as good as I thought I was at recognizing the limits of my time and energy in doing so, I was not good enough. And so in order to continue serving you and myself, both, I am limiting the way in which I share my time and energy to working with my clients and creating the videos and books that you enjoy. My friendship, I'm reclaiming for myself. I wish each of you so much joy and peace for these tumultuous times. And look for my Dragonfly videos, which will be out soon. I cannot wait to share them with you. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Cheers.